Agricultural land in Serbia can be a great investment, but only if you know what you're doing. Many foreigners make avoidable mistakes that not only cost them time and money, but also the entire land itself. So today I want to walk you some of the things to avoid when you're getting into agricultural properties. Now we're seeing a lot of individuals coming to Serbia that are looking to invest in certain agricultural land here. Even if they're foreigners, they do not have the right to simply purchase the property outright under their own name. Typically, agricultural land is left for citizens of Serbia, but there are a couple of workarounds on that, which we will get into in this video. But the first thing that we see that people are getting involved with, and they're not only doing this on their own, but with other firms out there, and these firms are not letting them know, or they're making private deals, is doing this in their own name. The thing is that, you can find the best type of property out there. It's a great location. It has the crops that you're looking to grow. But if you do not structure the deal properly, if you're trying to purchase it in your own name, you're going to come into some legal consequences that I do not wish upon anybody, and that's why a lot of people are trusting us not only to source this agricultural land for them, but to also set it up legally so that they can own it legally, they can operate it legally, they can employ their employees legally, and that they can actually expedite and export these the produce from these lands out to other markets, which is what we're going to be doing not only in this video, but the following video, which I will be breaking down into a two-part series, is this one here, things to avoid, and then the markets that you should be looking at when you're purchasing agricultural land, which will be in part 2 of this video. So foreigners cannot actually purchase agricultural land in their own personal name here legally. The laws restrict the ownership to Serbs only. However, there are some ways that you can do it through a EU passport, but there are some very narrow exceptions when it comes to that, and 99% of the people do not qualify when it comes to that. And so the only way you can do so is through a DOO company. Now, one thing that has arisen in some of the consultations we've had with our clients is, why can I not just open up a entrepreneur business and not a DOO? The reason you can't do that is that the entrepreneur business is still in your own personal name. It's a sole proprietorship. It's not a separate entity such as what a DOO is. Now, one of the things that our clients do is they avoid DOO because it is a much more complicated structure. There's a lot more moving parts, and there's a lot more overhead when it comes to purchasing or getting a DOO enacted or made to purchase agricultural property. But when it is done properly, it works for agribusinesses, small farms, homesteads, and orchards. So if you get the articles of incorporation correctly, you are able to purchase any of these properties that you're looking to do. And that's why when we do our consultations, we ask what you're looking to do with these type of properties and what you're looking to purchase. Now, of course, with a DOO, you do need bookkeeping, you need real activity, especially since there is overhead that you're going to be paying with a DOO. And so if you set up the wrong DOO with the wrong articles of incorporation, you're going to risk audits and bank account opening when it comes to getting things started. So you want to make sure that your articles of incorporation are done correctly correctly so that you are not audited by the business registry, by the tax authorities, and then you have less friction when it comes to opening up your bank account. Now, one of the things I mentioned earlier is that EU passports do give some people the automatic buying rights here in Serbia when it comes to agricultural property. However, there are many things that you have to be looked at when you do so. So the reality of purchasing something through an EU passport, which 99% of the people do not qualify for, is that you'll require 10 years residence in that municipality where you are purchasing that agricultural business. You have to have active farming and equipment and a number of other things that come along with, making sure that you're in the legal confinements of purchasing that property. And one thing I want to mention in this video is by no means is this legal advice. Everyone has their own agendas, everyone has their own situations, and everything is done on a case-by-case basis when you hire us as a business. So don't take any of the information I'm giving you in this video as legal advice. We'd have to sit down for a consultation to go over your own situation. Now, one of the biggest ones that we're seeing is that people are not checking the zoning when it comes to the property that they're looking to purchase. That they think they're buying land and that they can build a house on it, or they can create some villa on it. And that is completely wrong when it comes to agricultural property. Agricultural property falls under agricultural zoning, and so you have strict limits as to what you can do with that. You must also conform with the municipal spatial plan, and that means that just because it has a garden or a greenhouse on that property, that you're able to build a house. Just because it has a barn, people think that you can put some sort of residential building on that. That is not the case on when it comes to that. Now, some people will be like, okay, no problem, I will just get it rezoned. And that's something that that many people are mistaken when it comes to that. Not all, and most of the times, agricultural property takes a long time just to go through the legal process of rezoning, and then it's always up to the municipality if they will issue that rezoning permit. So the best thing to do is that you are going to look at what it looks like to rezone that agricultural property before you purchase it. So make sure that you verify it before you actually move through it. And yes, you may have to put in some capital in order to pay government offices, the tax authorities, so on and so forth. Of course, legal counsel comes into that to do the due diligence of that property before you purchase it, to see if it's able to be rezoned. So just because you're purchasing that property and you think you're going to rezone it down the road, the last thing you want to do is to set up the company to purchase the land, to then go into rezoning procedure and to find out that you will be denied when the time comes, and then you are out much more money. It's a lot easier to invest a little bit of money at the beginning to see if you're able to rezone it, find out that it's not going to go through, rather than spending all the money beforehand. Now, with that said, the other thing that people do skip is the cadastral due diligence. So they go based on the agent's information, the property owner's information, that it falls under the cadaster's, drawings and what they have listed in the cadastre, but not actually verifying it through the cadastre. So what do you need to verify in the cadastre? You must check the recent ownership in the cadastre. You must also check if there's any mortgages or liens on that property. Restitution claims is another one that people don't take into the sphere of purchasing that property, the boundary accuracy. So over the years, they may have had certain parcels given out to certain family members or sold to other neighbors around there, and what the boundary once was may not be what it currently is. So that's something else that you may want to take into account when it comes to purchasing that. And of course, encumbersomes. You want to look that there's no other things that are impeding you from owning that property. And the only way that you can do that is through a cadastral check, and that's something that we do here with our clients when it comes to purchasing any type of property, for that matter, not only subject to agricultural properties, but this also comes into focus when it comes to residential properties, because we've had clients where they find a property and there's a house on it. It looks like it's a residential property. However, in the cadastre, because that property is surrounded by other agricultural properties, it actually falls under agricultural jurisdiction and not residential. So that's something else. And we recently had this with a client who purchased a property in the south of Serbia. We went through, I think, 5 or 6 various properties before he was able to find the one that he was able to purchase. The next one is that people are buying the land with no legal road access to that property. So one of the things that people will see when they come into agricultural is they'll see a dirt road leading to the property. However, that dirt road is not owned by the city. It is actually owned by the neighbor, and they'll be like, oh, the neighbor lets us use it all the time. You don't have to worry about it. But legally, you do not have the legal right to use it. And so if by chance you and that neighbor get into a tiffy, that neighbor may say, hey, listen, you are no longer allowed to use that dirt road to access your land. And now you are completely what I call SOL, because you have no access to that property. And so if you have no road, you'll not be able to, have utilities. You'll have virtually no resale property or resale value when it comes to that. So you want to make sure that you have the right of access to that property. And we came into one of that with one of our clients who just recently bought a property just outside of Novi Sad here. This was a residential property, not agricultural, but because that road that was going to their house was owned by the neighbor, we had to make sure that they had legal right to use that road. So this falls again into all properties, but agricultural, especially if you're looking to bring in heavy machinery, if you're looking to bring in crews for work, you were looking to bring in supplies, you need road access in order to do so. So making sure that you have legal right to use the roads there is something that you have to take into account. The next one is that Serbia, of course, is very cash friendly. And so some people think, hey, listen, what I'm going to do is purchase this property outside of the banking system. So I'm going to use cash, I'm going to use crypto, I'm going to use other informal transfers. And the problem with that is now you have zero legal protection if something goes wrong. And so if you put everything through a bank account and the paperwork is done legally, you have legal protection if something goes wrong, and the pay is actually traceable. So one of the things you may see is that people will say, hey, I'll give you a better price if I get paid in cash or in other means. And you pay that individual cash, and the next thing you know, that individual disappears, and now what are you gonna do? You can't say, I gave him cash and he never gave me the paperwork, he never signed that property over. Now this can go for all properties, but agricultural is something different, especially if you're trying to do this outside a DOO, if you're trying to do this in your personal name, then you're really gonna be kicking the can down the street, because you have no legal right to purchase agricultural land in your personal name, and there's no way to trace the money, the payment that you made, that you gave to that individual. So make sure that whatever you're doing when it comes to payments, that you're doing it through some sort of traceable platform, and banks typically are the best way here in Serbia. The other thing that people fail to look at when they're purchasing agricultural land is the taxes and extra costs that come along with that. So if you're looking to create that land for some sort of business, you're wanting to ship some sort of produce out there, you may fall into the VAT system. You may have some transfer taxes in there as well. Of course, you're going to have notary fees, court translators, lawyer review. You're going to probably need surveyors to make sure that that land that you're purchasing is actually the land that you're buying. So getting a surveyor out there, that's going to cost a little bit of money. Of course, annual property taxes are going to be different for agricultural property than they are for residential. And of course, the other overhead if you're purchasing this through a DOO here in Serbia. These are things that need to be taken into account. Now, the next one is that people think that just simply buying agricultural land will give them residency, and that's not the case. What you're going to be actually obtaining residency through is opening up that corporation here in Serbia, and you have to have real activity in that business as well. Some people think that I'll open up the business today, I'll get my residency, and that's it. But the thing is that when you're opening up a business and looking for residency typically is only given at a 1-year increment based on business, because they want to make sure that it's an actual business, that you're going to be sending out invoices, that you're going to be collecting payments, that it's an actual revenue generating business, and that you're not just using it as a shell to have your residency. Now, are you always going to be asked for documentation when it comes to your renewal, when it comes to your residency? It could be the officers, when it comes to your residency, are allowed to ask for any sort of documentation. And if you fail to produce that documentation, you are on the risk of losing your temporary or your residency permit here as well. Now, the thing is that you can purchase cheap property, but that doesn't mean that it's always good property. So you want to make sure that the land that you're purchasing is something that is going to help you with what you're looking to generate out of that land. So if you're looking for orchards, if you're looking for some sort of berries, if you're looking for some sort of fruit, whatever it is, you want to make sure that the soil type is the proper one, that you have water access, irrigation rights is something else, and also electrical connections. I just recently had a client here in a couple days ago, and he was like, what is things I have to look at when I'm purchasing agricultural property? And it says, make sure you have water there, because we've had some pretty dry summers here. And if you're looking to get something out of your crop, you're going to want to make sure that you can have water to water your crop, because if you're just relying on Mother Nature, you're going to be disappointed, especially with the past 2 years where we did not have much rainfall in that sense. And so you may want to have a deep drilled well. You may want a city connection, so you have a constant water supply. In my opinion, it's best to have both, so that way if one goes down, you have the other. It's always good to have options when it comes to keeping your crops well watered and in good condition. With that said, you also want to check that the actual on-ground use that you have there. So, the land may look unused, but locals still may use it for graze animals, planting their own crops, park machinery there. the owner of the property that you're purchasing it from may have an agreement with the neighbor and they don't disclose that information. And so you want to make sure that it's not actually being used by someone for other purposes, that they have their own agreements with, so that you are free and clear and don't get into any conflict when you do take over that property. And the final one is purchasing the property with zero long-term plan. So purchasing agricultural property is not as easy or not as simple as purchasing a house or an apartment where, if you're not there, you're fine. Agricultural property, you need to have intended use of what you're going to do, because especially if you're doing it through a corporation, what revenue are you going to be generating off that? You want to, typically I like to look at worst case scenarios, and then anything above that is a bonus. Maintenance. How are you going to maintain your crops? How are you going to maintain your land? Are you going to hire people there? So that comes into management. How are you going to manage that? We can help people who are looking for people to maintain the land, maintain the crops, to harvest the crops, to export their crops. However, we need to understand that plan so that we can hire the correct individuals for your goals and for your plan, and then as well as an exit plan. It's good to get in while you're young, but owning and running agricultural property when you're in your 60s, 70s, or 80s might not be something that you're looking to do, and you want to understand, what is your exit plan? Am I going to grow this big enough so that I can sell it to an investor, or is this something that I'm going to be passing down to my future generations? And they're going to be taking care of that? Or am I going to have a deal with a business partner where they take this over once I don't want to do this? So that's something that you have to take into consideration. So agricultural land in Serbia can be an excellent opportunity. However, there are many things that you have to take into account, many proper steps that you have to take into consideration, and that's what we're here to help you with.